Hi there, welcome to this presentation. I'm going to introduce you to a technique. Some of you may have never heard of it before, some of you may have some familiarity, and some of you may be actively practicing it. So it's called emotional freedom technique, or the informal name is called tapping. Made popular recently, maybe in the last few years. There was a book called The Tapping Solution by Nick Ortner, and that sort of brought it to the forefront for a more commercial audience. So it was in the wellness space there for a bit, but his book got it out there in much bigger ways. It's, for me, one of the most useful, powerful techniques that I use to manage my emotional state and to process and deal with the gunk that comes up in life. It's a technique that I use sometimes instead of a meditation. I might sit down and do some emotional freedom technique on myself to get myself in the right state to deal with particular things. The reason why it's so effective is it actually disrupts the stress response. So the stress response, firing off the amygdala sets off these physiological things. We contract, we become super focused and hyper focused on the thing that's right in front of us, and we don't have broad perspective. We sweat, we have elevated heart rate, adrenaline courses through our bodies, sweaty palms, all of that sort of stuff. Stress response. So what happens is when we do this emotional freedom technique, we disrupt that. And the biggest thing when it comes to processing stuff is when we aren't disrupted like that, when we have a broader sense of the bigger picture, then we can see how everything fits together. When we're in a stress response, again, we're like looking at life through a toilet roll, trying to solve problems, rather than being in that helicopter looking at the whole scene and I see how all of these pieces fit together. So the technique. I imagine all of you have heard of acupuncture. Acupuncture, putting needles in particular way. Chinese developed this based on these energy meridians that move through the body. Now, how the Chinese figured out these energy meridians, I'll never know. Just thankful of it. And obviously it's a medical practice that is recognized by modern medicine as being a healing process that works in the same way each time. So it's replicable. So it has credibility. Somewhere along the line, someone realized that if they tapped on these acupressure points or acupuncture points, it would create a kinetic effect which creates an electrical pulse. So we tap on that, the fascia of the muscle, bang, creates this electrical pulse. So it creates, again, something that influences these meridian lines, these energy meridian lines that the Chinese mapped out. There's lots of different techniques, but I'll show you the most basic of them. And the technique is designed to be simple. It doesn't require any resources. You don't necessarily need a teacher, and that's why it's such a great tool to use, to have into your toolkit to deal with life. So here goes. The technique goes like this. I identify what might be the emotion I'm feeling or the thing that's triggering me. Maybe I've had an argument with my girlfriend and I've got this anger and I just can't get past this anger, and I'm stuck on my little hamster wheel where I'm just replaying this thing over my mind. I'm not learning, growing, moving forward, and I'm hyper fixated on what she did wrong. So I identify, okay, the emotion is anger. Then I score that on a scale of 1 to 10. Where 10s get me off the planet, 1s, it's not really much. So I might score that and I say I'm angry at a level of 8 out of 10. I'm pretty fired up. Okay, we mark that 8 out of 10. Then we go to the chopping point, karate chop point. I was going to get there eventually. And I tap on that and I might use 4 fingers. Doesn't matter which hand I'm on. And I use 4 fingers and I tap on that. And I tap on that as I acknowledge the emotion that I'm feeling and the experience around that emotion. So I might say, even though I'm angry at my girlfriend, I love and approve of myself. Even though I want to choke my girlfriend because she's just pissing me off so much, I love and approve of myself. Even though I want to kick her in the butt and put her in the doghouse, blah, blah, blah. I love and approve of myself. What we're doing with that process, and I'm playing around with that, is we're acknowledging we feel whatever we feel. So the first thing is, from a psychological perspective, if I have a feeling and I suppress that feeling saying I shouldn't be feeling that feeling, when in reality I am, I'm going to suppress those emotions and they're going to come out in ways that don't necessarily serve me. So the first thing I need to do is acknowledge what I'm feeling. That's a beautiful step forward. And just by doing that, I'm automatically taking the emotional intensity of this thing probably down from an 8 already to a 7 just by doing that, before I've even dived into the fullness of the process. Then what I do is I tap on 8 separate points, and I'll take you through the 8 points, and then I'll talk about what we do as we go through those 8 points. So the first one is above the eyebrow. So like, right on that sort of line there, on the bone. To the side, that's the second one. So again, on that bone there. Third below the eye. Fourth below the nose. Fifth below the lip. 6 collarbone, and I probably bumped the microphone then. And you're probably hearing a bang, bang, bang. 7 under the arm for the girls, bra strap line around there. And 8 on the top of the head. So I tap those points and I just keep going around those, and then I might stop at some point, take a few breaths. And what I'm doing is, by tapping on these points, this is the philosophy behind that, or hypotheses behind it. When we tap those things, we're sending a signal back to the amygdala to tell it not to wig out on this particular thing, because it's just a thought I'm having. I don't need a physical response, a psychological response for this issue. I don't need to be sweating it up. I don't need this elevated heart rate. I don't need to be hyperfixated. So by tapping on these things, we're sending a message back to the amygdala to say, stand down. Stand down. Let me just deal with this thing without wigging out. So as I'm tapping on these 8 points, I'm actually talking about, what the issue is. So I'm tapping on these points as I'm saying, I'm so angry, I can't believe she did that, why did she do this? I get all the blur off my chest, and that's like this top level of stuff. I get all the reactive stuff, all the triggering stuff, all the stuff that's brought up by childhood memories, all of that stuff, I get all of that out of the way. And that may take 5 minutes, 10 minutes of just going. What happens while I'm tapping and I'm blurting, instead of taking a downward spiral, which generally happens when we're wigging out and when we're verbally regurgitating all of this stuff, spewing this stuff forward, normally we go in a downward spiral. We get more angry, more agitated. But by tapping through these 8 points, I'm getting all that stuff up and I'm staying, my nervous system, my sympathetic nervous system is actually starting to come down, and I'm starting to have that parasympathetic nervous system re-engaged. What that means is, once I've spewed all that out of the way and I've run out of steam in that, then I can actually get perspective. And what's happened at a physical level, I've actually taken my attention and all my awareness from my midbrain. I'm starting to access the upper brain, the frontal lobes. I can start seeing the perspective. I can start seeing how all the pieces fit together. I couldn't get there when I was in this survival emotional state, when I was reactive. So I've tapped, I've got everything off my chest, then I get broader perspective. And in my case of the example, the scenario I was saying, I tap that off, and then I might get to the space of, I forgot that, she's got these other things going on. I forget that she had that issue with her mother just recently. I get to see the whole picture, because I'm not in that reactive state with the brain power of a dog. I'm up here now in my higher state, and I can see it all. I'm like, now I can actually take some personal responsibility as well. And I can start saying, what might I do to move through this thing? What part did I play, and how can I make amends for the part I played? So it is a powerful, powerful tool. Now, emotional freedom technique has been used with post-traumatic stress disorder. So again, veterans or other people with post-traumatic stress disorder have used this and have reduced this emotional intensity that they have around, significant high-level trauma, and brought it down. What they've also found is they've brought it down and then it's actually stayed down there when they remember that thing. Because what we're doing is bringing that image to mind and we change the emotion that we have attached to it. And if we change the emotion from something that's negative to something that's neutral or positive, it changes everything. It changes what happens biochemically in our body as well. It's been used for children in Africa that have seen, horrible genocide, seen their parents, killed in front of them. So they're like red line 10 out of 10. Again, a very simple technique. Teach them, bring this emotional intensity down. And again, they found that it stayed down there. It repatterned within someone's memory the emotion associated to that, allowed them to sort of, create some space between it. Rather than being in their face, it's created some space, taken it away there and allowed them to see it. The terrible things still happen, but the impression and relationship and association with that emotionally has shifted as a result of doing this emotional freedom technique. So again, it's a powerful, powerful technique. I encourage you, I've got down there just a 2-page PDF that I've taken information from the Tapping Solution by Nick Ortner. And I'll put a link there to check out his book. You can do searches on YouTube for emotional freedom technique or tapping to find some more information there as well. And I'll have a PDF of a book talking about tapping as well. So check out those resources. For me, it is one of the best tools that I have in my arsenal. It doesn't require any cost. It doesn't require any resource, but me being willing to do this thing. So I don't want you to be there in the future complaining that you're wigging out and you're in this emotional state and you can't get past this particular thing and having not tried this. So do try it the next time you come up with an experience where your emotions are running high, running hot, and they've got you in that midbrain and you're in that reactive state and you can't get perspective. I want you then at that point to remember Carl Massy talking in front of you and saying, try this tapping thing out to see the experience. And experience it for yourself, not just listen to me tell you how good it is. Put it into play, sit there with it, 5, 10, 15 minutes. I've done tapping for an hour at a time where I'm working on some physical stuff, I'm working on some emotional stuff. So you can even use tapping with like a sore back. Even though I've got this sore back, which is causing me to be frustrated. So you might tap on the physical thing and also the emotion that's associated with the physical thing as well. Powerful, powerful technique. Okay, that's enough me talking on that. Questions down below, or bring your questions, as always, to our Q&A coaching sessions where I look forward to serving you more. So have a fantastic day and I'll speak to you soon.